Welcome back to our course on creative thinking and critical thinking. And in this module, we're going to look at creative thinking and also brainstorming. So we will just look at the differences and recap on the differences between critical thinking and creative thinking. If we look at this graph, we can see that critical thinking, as we looked at before, which is more left brain thinking, is analytic. It's convergent, it's vertical, and it talks about probability as well as judgment. It is also focused and objective and requires answers. It is left brain thinking, and therefore it is very verbal, using words. It is a linear process and it uses reasoning. And the question somebody would say is, yes, but. This is how a person approaches some kind of subject that's given to them or answers given to them. They would say, yes, but. So it's very inquiring, it's very inquisitive. If we look at creative thinking, then we are looking at right brain. And here it is very generative, divergent and lateral in the way that the processes are. It talks about possibility. It talks about suspending judgment. You don't make judgment on anything. And it's about diffusing information. It is subjective and it requires answers. It is also right brain in its hemisphere thinking, and it is visual, being a right brain process. And also it is associative and rich and full of novel ideas. And when someone is a creative thinker, they will respond to something by yes and. So they don't really inquire, they add things, yes and. Whereas a critical thinker will say yes, but. So that's a basic difference. If you can remember those, that helps you understand quite easily the differences between critical and creative thinking. So let's look a bit more at creative thinking. And this is the process we use to develop ideas that are unique and useful and worthy of further elaboration. And everybody has the ability to be able to think creatively. Creative thinkers. What do? Creative thinkers consider rejecting standardized formats for problem solving. They want to have different, unique ways of doing things. They have an interest in a wide range of related and divergent fields, and they take multiple perspectives on a problem. They use trial and error in their methods of experimentation, and they also look to the future of things. This is their thinking style. They have self-confidence and they trust in their own judgment. So, some creative thinking questions that would be apparent are ones like this. What would exist that does not exist now? What would be happening that does not happen now? What decisions would be made and executed? What accomplishments would be in place that are not now? What patterns of behavior that are currently in place would be eliminated? This is the style of creative thinking questioning. So, are you a creative thinker? Have you got abilities? How do you improve your creative thinking abilities? So here are some ideas that can help you to improve those particular skills. We know what they are. We've looked at critical thinking as opposed to creative thinking. We've looked at left brain, right brain. So you have an idea now of your particular thinking and where it lies. So to improve creative thinking abilities, you can keep track of your ideas at all times. This is a very good way to help you. Many times you might have ideas that come up. You might be asleep in bed. At an unexpected time, you come up with an idea. So jot it down. If you can write it down somewhere, that's one way you can develop your abilities and go to it the next day and continue elaborating on that. So if an idea is not written down within 24 hours, it usually is forgotten. You know, not many people can remember that great spark 24 hours later because there's so many things to do. So write it down within 24 hours. Try to do it as quickly as possible. You can ask yourself questions every day. New questions, not the same old questions. Ask new questions. An inquiring mind is a creatively active one that enlarges its area of awareness. So become more aware, become more active in your inquiries. So pose new questions. And to be more creative, keep abreast of the things that you do in your particular areas of interest or your work or your hobbies. Read magazines, trade journals and other literature in your field to make sure you're just not using yesterday's news and yesterday's technology to solve today's problems. You have to be up with the latest stuff, the latest information. So what's new? That's a way that you can develop your creative abilities. And also engage in creative hobbies. Hobbies that can help you relax as well as keeping your mind active for creative growth. You know, take up painting, for example, or take up doing something that is creative and you can really do something different with your hands or with your mind. But creative things draw out your abilities purely because you're doing something that's different and exciting. Have courage and self-confidence. Be a paradigm pioneer, which means change yourself, change who you are. Be confident and courageous and assume that you can solve something, which pulls out your abilities even more. Be more confident and persistent in yourself and try to believe in yourself and overcome obstacles that block the solution pathway. So when you have this courage and self-confidence, all your skills come out. You can begin to develop things, and this is a key to develop your creative thinking skills. And learn to know and understand yourself. Learn more about yourself, your real strengths, your real skills, what you like, what you don't like. Don't just chop and change. If your friend likes it, you like it. Say what you like and become more aware of yourself and all the things that you know about yourself, your fears, what you are prejudiced about, your expectations. This is self-awareness, and it will build your ability to draw on your creative thinking ability. And learn about things outside your specialty. Go into new territory. Use cross-fertilization to bring ideas and concepts from one field or specialty to another. So mix things up, explore. Don't just stick to the same old thing that you're used to doing. You'll never develop your creative thinking ability if you just stay focused on what you always do every day, all the time. So go outside your specialty. And avoid rigid or set patterns of doing things. Some people are creatures of habit, and every day in their life they know exactly what they're going to do at a certain time of day. Well, try to avoid that rigidity in your life and overcome your preconceived ideas about things. Look at things from a fresh point of view, always developing at least 2 or more kinds of solutions to a problem. So jump outside of that rigid pattern of sameness. So be open and receptive to ideas, your ideas and other people's ideas. And new ideas, they are fragile, so stop them from breaking. Try to seize on them, even though they may only be half-formed or possibilities. Try to seize on them and develop them. Think of how they could be in the future and the possibilities that can come from that. And also be alert in your observations. Look for similarities, look for differences, as well as the unique and the distinguishing features in a situation and a problem. So being alert is another way that you can develop your ability to see things creatively and to see the unique and distinguishing things. And I think this is an important thing too. When you're trying to be creative and think creatively, you need to sort of be a little bit risky in the way you think. Your attitude needs to be one of including a bit of risk. So fear of failure, we say, is the major impediment to generating solutions which are risky. So outlining the ways you could fail and how you would deal with these failures will reduce this obstacle to creativity. So take a bit of a risk with things. A small chance of succeeding might have a major impact on something. So take that risk. This is something that you need to be able to do to be a little bit more creative in your thinking. And finally we come to another way, or the last way, that you can develop your creative thinking ability, and that is to keep a sense of humor. You are more creative when you are relaxed. And humor, or fun, or lightheartedness can help in putting your problems into perspective. Sometimes we look at ourselves too much in a hard way. So try to lighten up and look at things with a little bit of humor and lightheartedness. Many times it can relieve tension, and if it makes you feel more relaxed and less tense, then you're more likely to be able to think more openly and think in a more relaxed and new ideas way. So we've just looked at ways that you can become more creative in your thinking approaches or your thinking styles. And when we look at creativity and thinking of new things, we also come to the subject of brainstorming. And now we come to brainstorming. We've looked at critical thinking and creative thinking, and you are probably very familiar with the term brainstorming. And in brainstorming, the creative process and the critical thinking process, these are both important. Now, brainstorming is one of the most important techniques to generate and to develop new ideas. And here we will look at the brainstorming process and the phases. If we look at this diagram, we can see that we have at the bottom the brainstorming process. Now, in order to reach that stage, we have two kinds of thinking. We have lateral thinking and vertical thinking. And we will talk about those a little bit later in the program. Lateral thinking is associated with Edward de Bono, the guru of lateral thinking, and vertical thinking is associated also with Alex Osborne, who is the father of brainstorming. If we look here at our diagram, we can see that there are several phases in the brainstorming process. And we will go through these with examples so you can clearly see how this all works together. Basically, before I begin there, the brainstorming process is involved also with free association, which is the unstructured generation of ideas. And this is where the creative thinking skills come into play. So to give you a little bit of background about brainstorming, I'd like you to understand that this was developed by a gentleman called Alex F. Osborne, who is no longer with us. He developed this in the early 1900s, and he is known as the father of brainstorming. He said it is easier to tone down a wild idea than to think up a new one. And so this forms the basis of his philosophy about brainstorming, in that try to generate as many crazy ideas as possible. rather than try to think up a new one. So we'll go through his ideas about brainstorming in this program as well. So he was an advertising executive and a creativity theorist. In 1941, he published his works on creativity, and his works have become famous, and he coined the term brainstorming. He was the one who invented that particular term. And along with Sidney Parnes, Osborne developed the Osborne-Parnes creative problem-solving process. And in later programs on problem-solving, we will look at that particular process. So this is Alex Osborne, the father of brainstorming. Next, we look at Dr. Edward de Bono. And you may also be familiar with the 6 thinking hats. Well, this is a development of Edward de Bono, and he's famous for it. He's a leading authority on lateral thinking and conceptual thinking in problem solving. And since 1970, his tools have been used in many organizations around the world to develop problem solving techniques and to develop organizational cultures and people's skills. So Edward de Bono, as we all understand and most people are familiar with, his 6 thinking hats. And his 6 thinking hats technique is an invaluable teaching tool for thinking. It breaks down the thinking process into 6 components. And I'll just run through it quickly here so you can recognize it and be familiar with it before we move on. The 6 thinking hats processes are 6 different colors, and you put on 6 different hats to be able to think of solutions from different ideas, different perspectives. We have the process perspective, the facts perspective, the feelings perspective, the creativity perspective, the benefits perspective, and the cautions perspective. And each perspective has a different color, and it's been coined as the 6 thinking hats with 6 different colors, and it's used in many, many organizations around the world to solve problems by using lateral and conceptual thinking. So the 6 thinking hats takes the ego out of thinking, and this is the beauty of it. It allows more objective and more comprehensive consideration of an issue. And before we move on, for your interest in terms of techniques to help us think about things, we've looked at Edward de Bono and the 6 thinking hats. There is also a modern technique that assists in the free association phase, the brainstorming, creative thinking phase. And it has been developed by Tony Buzan, and it is called mind mapping. And some of you may be familiar with his work and seen mind maps, and there are many courses available on mind mapping. So it is a free association technique. It is a powerful technique using graphics which provide universal keys to unlocking the potential of the brain. It harnesses the full range of our thinking skills of using words and images and numbers, logic, rhythm, color, and spatial awareness in a single, uniquely powerful manner. And in doing so, mind mapping gives you the freedom to roam the infinite expanses of your brain. So the mind map can be applied to every aspect of life, where improved learning and clearer thinking will enhance human performance. And we can see here, this is Tony Buzan, and he has written many, many books on mind mapping, and this is an example of what a mind map looks like. And I'm fairly sure that you are familiar with mind maps. This course, we won't go into that in detail, but these are techniques that help in the brainstorming process.